You found a place to belong here in the Circle of Friends. I'm Missy, and I'm with Amy. Amy,
hello.
You came back. I'm so glad.
I did. I feel ill-equipped, like I said yesterday, but I came back.
No, I think you're very equipped, and sometimes it's nerve-wracking sitting in front of a microphone, and it is for us as well. All of us who do the radio, Beth will tell you, anyone who's done this will tell you that it is nerve-wracking at times because you know that you're saying things, and maybe I often misspeak, or maybe I give a reference wrong, or maybe even I've got wrong thinking. That's entirely possible,
right.
Believe it or not. But, Missy has an opinion. It's Missy's opinion, and it's not really right. I often like to say we're going to get to heaven and I'm going to find out that I'm 99.9% wrong. wrong.
Yeah.
Even though I think I'm right all the time, because my opinion is my opinion, right? But this idea of apologetics and talking about conversations that we have with people and how to answer the tough questions, those tough questions, and we've talked about a few of them. But I'm curious today if somebody says to you, there is no God. You can't. God is dead. There's. Look around you. Look at all the evil in the world. There's no God. If there was a God, if there was a loving God like you claim, He would do something about this. What do you say to that?
And I would say He is going to do something about it. I mean, the person who says, how can a loving God allow all this injustice in the world? Well, He doesn't. And
He's a righteous judge.
He's a righteous judge. And
it's in His timing.
And the things you see as evil, the things you see, there is a recompense. Thank you.
Lovely word.
For that. Yeah. And then when you see terrible things happening to people because of other people's choices, God gives us free will. God gives us a choice. And that's a loving God that gives us a choice. If we didn't have a choice, we'd all be robots.
Right.
But there is going to be consequences for those terrible choices and the sin in the world.
Yeah.
And
I like to go back to the Garden of Eden and say, God did create paradise. He created a beautiful world. We had everything we needed, and there was no evil in that garden. It was wonderful. Adam and Eve walked with God, but they made a choice. Yeah. And when they made a choice, sin entered the world, and we're all sinners. You can't
sin
point to me one person who hasn't made a mistake, had a wrong thought, had evil intentions towards someone, even if it's you jerk. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like little or big, however you want to look at it, we really, truly all have sinned, and I think we can see that because we see that nobody's perfect.
Yeah. And He will make it right.
And He will make it right. He will make it right. That's right.
There'll be in the end, He'll make it right. And there's
this idea of justice really, it really intrigues me because I just think it's something we all long for.
And you know what? That's a evidence of God in and of itself. We all have a sense of justice in us. You may think, oh, that's something that's learned, but that is something that's innate across all cultures. Different cultures might have different norms and mores because they're, whatever's important to them. But there's a sense of morality, a sense of justice that's in all of us. C.S. Lewis, I remember he talks about the example in chapter 1 of, like, it opens up with, say you're on a bus and you stand up just for a second and someone scoots in behind you and takes your seat. Yeah. That is injustice. You have a rate. That's not fair. Everybody knows things like that aren't fair. And we have a sense of that's not right.
That's not right.
Where does that come from? Where does that sense of justice come from? We all have it in us.
You're right. It's across the nations. I mean, I can imagine being in a foreign country in a farmer's market and somebody taking something from a booth. I don't have to understand the language to understand the shopkeepers running at what's going on there. That's not right. Somebody took something that didn't belong to them. In the sense of injustice that's in us, I love that. I've never really thought about that being an evidence that God does exist, but He does.
It's a moral law that's written on our hearts, and so you have to ask who's the lawgiver. Yes. Where does that moral law come from?
Yes.
Where does that sense of injustice, when we recognize justice and injustice in us, where does that come from? What comes from a lawgiver? And then also another evidence of God is just the very creation. Romans, we should get that out. Romans 1, somewhere midway through Romans, I think it's verse 20 or somewhere around there, talks about even the very creation speaks of God.
Yeah, Romans 1, I'm going to start with verse 19. For the truth about God is known to them instinctively. Well, actually, I'm going to start with verse 18. But God shows his anger from heaven against all sinful, wicked people who push the truth away from themselves. For the truth about God is known to them instinctively. God has put this knowledge in their hearts. From the time the world was created, people have seen the earth and sky and all that God made. They can clearly see his invisible qualities, his eternal power and divine nature. So they have no excuse whatsoever for not knowing God.
Mm-hmm. And I think those verses speak to what we're talking about, the injustice in our heart, that we're without excuse, that we know right from wrong, that is somewhere in there. Even if we haven't heard the name of Jesus, we know right from wrong. And then it also speaks to the very creation, speaking of the existence of God. This reminds me of a book I read called The Signature in the Cell. I'll give you the author later. I can't think of it right now. But basically, he is talking about DNA and that we have the signature of, he doesn't believe in God like a relational God as we do, but at least intelligent design. And he said there's a signature in every cell of intelligent design.
Wow.
When he's speaking about DNA, he talks about genetic code. And where you have genetic code, which is a form of language, you have a code giver. So even in DNA, the genetic code is evidence that there's some intelligent design giving a code, language, speaking a language of how to, that's a specific code given by a code giver.
So who's speaking, right?
Right. Who's speaking? Who is that code giver? And, but the idea that some scientists don't even believe intelligent design is mind-boggling. When you look, I think I just love that reason that he uses. And I just looked up the name. It's Stephen C. Meyer. Such an interesting book. It's called Signature in the Cell.
Signature in the Cell.
I loved that every cell has a signature. And actually, I've done a gallery show called Thumbprint. And a big part of it is Signature in the Cell.
Really? With your painting?
Yeah. That everything in nature has God's thumbprint on it, or God's signature.
Wow.
And so the last show was called Thumbprint. My next show is, I think, going to be called Signature, that all of nature has his signature. And I tie that into mathematics because I'm a mathematician. And the fact that everywhere you look in all of creation, there's mathematics buzzing in the background. And in the field of math, it's debatable whether math is created or discovered. And I absolutely believe it's discovered. Again, it's mind-boggling to me that some mathematicians might think it's creative.
Who could have created it?
Right. It's there, and we're discovering it.
Discovering more and more and more about math all the time.
Yes.
You think of just even world progress and what it took for the internet, the computer. Absolutely, you have to have mathematics for that.
Yeah.
So
I think a perfect example of discovering it. I took a class in college called non-Euclidean geometry, and in it, it's a geometry that's not of this world. In high school we learned plane geometry, Euclid geometry. Well, this was non-Euclidean geometry, and we studied things that seem nonsensical, like parallel lines intersect instead of run parallel. And that sounds nonsensical, but these mathematicians back in the late 1800s, I think it was late 1800s. No, before that, it's been over 200 years since non-Euclidean geometries have been discussed and discovered. But even in that day, mathematicians were debating, like, this isn't a real math. This is nonsensical. Well, they discovered that over 200 years ago. And now when you go really, really big into the cosmos or really, really small into quantum physics, Euclidean geometry does not apply. You have to use non-Euclidean geometries.
Wow.
And how could they have known that? Some people, it seemed like they were creating this nonsensical math, but it existed. And now it's applicable over 200 years later.
Now we're seeing
that's
why.
God. Yeah. And that's God. When I learned that in math, I just got so excited because to me, that's such evidence of God. And I use that in my art too, in my gallery shows.
That is so cool. And I love the fact that you combine all of this, your love of the Word of God and apologetics, you're an artist and you're a mathematician, and you combine all of that together. I love it. It's so awesome. And again, that just shows me how how God, our Creator, is so amazing because we're so uniquely designed, and He planned all this.
Oh,
you know what I'm saying? Like,
I dreamed of being, going to art school, and because of my health, I didn't, and I went into math. But then God used that, planned that for me, that I have this unique niche in art that I wouldn't have found if it hadn't been following God's plan, honoring my parents. I could go into that later, but one thing, and this, I didn't think about this, but it's kind of along the line of what we're thinking. When I do a show, I want to be open to the seeker. I don't want people to be turned off or not come to my shows because they think, oh, this is a Christian artist. So I'm very careful with how I title the shows. Like the first one I did was Math, Logos, Music / Evidence of the Divine. I purposely used the word divine instead of evidence of God because I wanted people to come out of curiosity, Math, Logos, Music. And so they come to the show, and then subtly or not so subtly at different parts, different paintings or different things I write. My shows, there's, I write didactics or I write descriptions that go with the paintings, and there's always the gospel involved in that. So once they get in there, God, there's evidence of God, and then there's evidence of Jesus Christ. And I include scriptures and things like that. But I'm always careful with how I title it. So the next one I titled Thumbprint / Mathematics, Evidence of the Divine. And my next one's going to be Signature, Evidence of the Divine.
Amy, that's so cool. And I've been to one of your shows, and I really want to go to the next one. That's so neat and goes so completely with what we've been talking about this week. But we got to take a break, as it so often happens, right in the midst of some kind of exciting conversation. But we'll be back, and we'll talk about it some more in a moment after this. Listeners, you have found a place to belong right here in the Circle of Friends.
Village Gift Barn in Berlin, Ohio carries one-of-a-kind finds, just as unique as you. Our elegant shop has everything you need to dress up your home and your wardrobe. We're dedicated to offering new, exciting merchandise. As you explore our 3 amazing floors, that's over 20,000 square feet, you'll discover everything from home decor and furnishings to a beautifully diverse women's boutique. Are your walls blank? Is your furniture blah? Do you never have anything to wear? We've got you covered. Stop by and let our friendly, knowledgeable team help you create a look that's all your own. Village Gift Barn is located in the heart of Amish country at 4755 State Route 39 in Berlin, Ohio.
You see all things into the corners of each heart. Everything is in your hands, from the cradle to the stars. And you take our dreams and all we hope to be. Through joy and tears, pain and laughter, we know you'll never leave. Oh, you are a love divine. There's nothing better in this world that we could ever find. Oh, your truth gives life.
We're back here on the Circle of Friends. You're with Missy and Amy. And Amy, this conversation is so fascinating to me as you talk about, you're an artist, you're a mathematician, you were a teacher for many years, and all of these things that you kind of tie together in your paintings, and you're talking about your showings and how you title a show. You know, the show has a name, and how you're so very careful to title it in such a way that seekers may be curious.
Right. I avoid being thought of as the Christian artist. I want seekers to come to the show and feel, and then...
Because they're going to know you're a Christian artist when they see your work and they read the descriptions of your paintings.
But hopefully it's a way that doesn't turn them off.
Yes.
You know, I think my paintings speak to intelligent design, at least the writings I put with it, and then I narrow it down from intelligent design to a personal God and narrow it down to the God of the Bible.
That is awesome. And again, the thing that it's so fascinating for me is to think of it this way. Listeners, we've been talking all this week about, in the broader scope, apologetics, or being prepared, being ready to answer people, and having conversations. But I want to point out that your show, you as an artist, and how God has created you and how he brought all that together in your life and what you've done with that, you're still having conversation, but you're having it in your own unique way. So maybe you love to host people in your home, or you have hospitality skills, or maybe you're just kind of a outgoing person and you like to talk to people, or maybe you're very quiet and you're clear on the other end of the scale. There is a way for you in your unique personality to start conversation with people. And it doesn't have to look the same for everybody.
Right.
And this, I think, is very, very important, because what happens is we can look at other people. And I've talked about my husband a lot this week and how he is he was a pastor for many years, for one thing. He loves people. He's got the personality to walk up to a stranger. I mean, he's just like his dad. His dad could speak to anybody. And 2 minutes later, you'd swear they were best friends. That it was just his personality. I'm not geared like that. And I've struggled thinking, he has these cool conversations with people, and he does these things, and I think, well, I got to, and I have to stop myself and say, Missy, yes, you have to be willing to have the conversation, but your conversation is not necessarily going to look like his conversation. Right. The way that you share Jesus, the way you share your faith, is going to look like something different for your personality. And one of those ways is on the radio. I've been doing radio for a long time. Never thought of that as a way to share my faith, but it fits. This show fits my personality.
Oh, you're so good. I mean, you're so good at it. You wouldn't want. You're also very humble, but this is not easy. For some people, this is not easy. This is not easy for me, but for some people like you're just a natural at it, and it's God's fit for you. Yeah. And it speaks to what you're saying. God uses what we have to have a unique ministry that only, specifically only we can do. Only each of you have the friends you have, the influence you have, the job you have, the people you come across, the interests you have, the knowledge you have. God uses it all, and we all have unique works that He's created, He's planned for us since the beginning of time. It's just a matter of being obedient. Yeah. And God uses it all. He takes all kinds. Like some people, I know it's common to be turned off by the guy on the street corner with the bullhorn yelling, turn or burn or whatever it is. Right. But you know what?
God
He uses that.
Too. Yes.
What's his name? Oh, I love him. What's his name?
You'll think of it in a minute.
Anyways, God used him. An Akron person on this, a person was on the corner with a sign, that kind of evangelist. And this person was saved through that. Yes. And has written books and that have influenced many people because of that one person that caused him to come to Christ because on a street corner. Yeah. So God uses it all. Even though some of that might look distasteful to us, it's speaking to someone.
Yeah, and according to our personality and our thoughts and our feelings and all those things, but we're all unique, and so we have to embrace everybody's way of sharing what they're sharing. Now, admittedly, we want to do it in a loving manner, in a way that draws people to us, but it's so unique to each person and so specific to how God created them that I just can't emphasize this enough. Listener, God has put something in you to share with others. And if you ask, He'll reveal it to you, and He'll show you the way for you to do that. It's not going to look like, you might not be an artist and a mathematician, so it might not look like Amy's shows, which are fantastic and amazing.
Well, thank you.
You might not be on a radio show. You might not be, as you look around and see other people, you might not be like my husband, who can start up a conversation with anybody in the whole world. But you are unique. And God has planted, as you said, Amy, has prepared good works for them to do, uniquely as them, not as someone else.
And I'd like to back up and apologize to the person whose calling it is to stand on the street corner with a bullhorn. I said that may be distasteful to us. I feel terrible that I even said that. God calls us all to different things.
Yes.
And I think of the big billboards as you're driving down the road. Some of those I look at and it doesn't speak to me, and I think, in my humanity, I'm a little embarrassed, like, oh, that seems so judgmental. But God, someone's driving down the road and needs that billboard at that precise moment, whether they're considering taking their life or whatever. God uses it all. And who are we to judge another person's calling?
Exactly. God uses it all. God is the one. And it may not, that's what I think when I see things and I think, oh, I wouldn't do ministry that way, whatever that ministry is. And I've done door-to-door evangelism or witnessing. And
I'm sure God's used it.
And God, yes. You have to appreciate that for how God has used it, because God will use anything. We have a saying that we often use on radio, and it's use what God puts in your hand. And what God puts in my hand is not going to be the same thing that he puts in your hand, Amy. It's not, listener, going to be the same thing that he puts in your hand. So we need to embrace those who are sharing Christ in whatever way they're sharing it, and applaud that.
Right.
And be thankful for that. It may not be your way of doing things. That's okay. God will show you your way of doing that.
And I remembered the man. It's Tozer, A.W. Tozer.
Yes.
And I don't know if you're familiar with him, but his books have impacted my spiritual life and how many numerous others. And he was saved in Akron, but I think he was a shoe salesman, and he was saved when he saw somebody on a street corner in Akron.
That's awesome.
And talking about God using where we are and what we are, now I'm speaking off my head, but I believe Tozer didn't even have a high school education and had issues with communication and writing. And look what God did with him. Yeah.
That's pretty amazing. So that's the message, really, is to be open to conversation, and whatever that conversation looks like, in whatever ways God has designed you to have that conversation, and to love. The higher calling is always love, and to share the love of God that he's poured on us and poured out to others. And there's just so many ways we can do that and be that person, especially in today's day and age. I feel like if you'll embrace that calling to love others, it will be so powerful today, as it always has been, but especially in today's world, when people feel like I said the other day, we're picking up sticks and stones. That's what we're doing. And we're not only beating our brothers and sisters, which I see so much of, brothers and sisters in the Lord, but we're beating non-believers as well. We're attacking people in ways that we should not do. It's okay to think differently from someone else. That starts with you and your attitude. How do you look at other people who don't believe like you do, or don't think like you do, or don't have the same opinion you do? It has to start with us personally, and then hopefully that love grows and we can manifest it and show it to others, because that is what God calls us to do. And I don't think people will listen unless you love.
Absolutely. It's in 2 Timothy where God, Paul tells God tells us through Paul telling Timothy to, I wish I could quote it, but basically to respond in kindness and to respond in gentleness, to tell the truth in love.
Speaking the truth in love, absolutely. Yeah, and that is a good question for ourselves. Missy, are you kind? When you speak to others, are you kind? To my shame, not always. And it's something that I have to confess and try to do better at, because God wants us to be kind. He wants us to respect people. It doesn't mean that you have to think the same way they do.
Right.
But for me, that means starting with the knowledge that choice is God-given. And that I can celebrate the fact that people have a choice. Whether I can agree with the choice they make or not, I can celebrate the fact that God gave them that choice. And that's amazing and great. And I'm sure I've made a lot of choices God hasn't been really happy about with me either. So, do you know what I'm saying? Like that,
Right.
that's what grace looks like, I think. And it has to walk hand in hand with love and truth. Otherwise, we are just, as Paul said in 1 Corinthians 13, we're just banging cymbals, We're just loud, clanging noise without love. And people are not going to listen. They're not going to be drawn to that.
I actually found that verse.
Oh, good.
It's in 2 Timothy 2:24. And the Lord's servant must not be quarrelsome, but kind to everyone, able to teach patiently, enduring evil. So that would mean even if people are intolerant of us. Or,
Right.
Correcting his opponents with gentleness. And there's other verses in 2 Timothy that talk about just being kind and acting, telling truth in love. I love that. We talk all the time, I've said it so many times before, but I really do believe that love without truth is not really love, and truth without love is not really truth. Right.
They have to go hand in hand.
Absolutely.
According to God's word and what He's shared with us. And because God is love, God is truth.
Mm-hmm.
You don't separate those two things. That is who He is. And so the more that we embrace that, and the more that we have Him transform us more into the likeness of Jesus, that's what's going to come out. That's what we're going to share. And I think that should be our heart's desire. And again, going back to understanding that it's not our job to fix people.
Right.
It took me a long time to learn that. I mean, I had that kind of stuck in my head without realizing it for a long time. I thought that I had to fix things. I had to fix relationships. I had to fix, you know what I mean? I kind of thought I was a savior in a sense. But I can't save anybody, and I can't make choices for people. I can only change my own behavior. You know, Amy, we're at the end of our day, but I do want to leave with this thought, because I think this is a challenge for me. It's a challenge for you. It's a challenge for our listeners. We need to walk in that love, in that higher calling that we talked about, that God calls us to love. We need to be open to conversation. We need to be very, very open and willing to listen. And I think we need to celebrate other people's right to choose. They may not choose the way we want, but it's not our job to correct them. It's our job to love them. And if we can share what we believe and why we believe in a manner that's truthful and loving, it opens the door for God to be able to work. It softens their heart enough. It drops the walls enough. It leaves the door open enough. However illustration you want to use, I think it brings the opportunity for, if not them to hear our words, but maybe to hear someone else's words.
Right.
Because if they have a bad encounter with a Christian who does not listen, or who bashes them, or, you know, a whole host of other things, what happens is, and that's true for all of us, we build a wall. Okay, I'm not going to, you're that. So, you know, suddenly the walls have gone up. So listeners, be open, be willing to listen, and absolutely embrace your calling to love others.
Yes.
It's a difficult job. You can't do it without Him, which is,
right.
You know, we love Him because He first loved us. But He does love us, and He does pour His love out on us. So we do have something to give to others. Hey, we're going to end it for today. Thank you so much for joining us, for being with us. We are so delighted when you join us, and we hope that you will join us tomorrow here in the Circle of Friends.
This program was brought to you through the generous support of donors and listeners like you. To contact Circle of Friends Ministries, you can write to P.O. Box 345, Berlin, Ohio, 44610, or find us on Facebook at circleoffriends.fm. Program archives can be found at thelight959.com.